This is Gemara's Zevachim, Daf Ayin Vov, and we're holding the bottom of Ayin Hey Amid Beis at the Mishnah as we continue discussing really the theme of this entire parak, which is multiple karbanos that get mixed together. And what do we do now when we have this after the mistake happens? We like all the learning to be an incredible Schos Refuah Shlema for Gavriel Simcha, Ben Miriam Ahuva, B'Seich Sha'ar Chaylei Yisrael. Teaches the Mishnah HaKoyahanim. No, not HaKoyahanim. Asham Shenis Arif. No, one more time. We're not at the right place over here. Okay, here we go. Hanitzanim Bifnim. That which is placed inside. So this is going back to a type of carbon that we've spoken about many times. And this, of course, is going to be particularly the chatas, as we're going to see, but in klali, it's the dam that's placed bifnim inside the azara. They can mix with dam that's placed outside. What's the halacha? Yishavchu la'ama. Basically, it has to be discarded. But what is the discarding in the Beis Hamikdash? Of course, is always placing it into the Amma, the canal that runs through the center of the Beis Hamikdash. And Rashi spells out that from the fact that the Tana says it has to be discarded, shows us clearly that this Tana does not subscribe to that which we've said previously. Just looking at Rashi for a moment, 3 lines at the bottom. To Leslin Ryan, he doesn't say that we can view the excess dam as if it's mayim, and therefore it's not going to be a problem to be placed on the mizbeach. And therefore, says the Mishnah, what do you have to do? It has to be discarded. Case number 2 in the Mishnah, but what happened? Nasan bachotz. He should have discarded it, but he didn't. He put it outside and then he put it inside. B'diavad, the lacha is kosher, but in the fakerta case, if he did, let's say he first placed it inside, then he went and placed it outside. Rabbi Akiva paisel, v'chachamim machshirim. Why? Rabbi Akiva imer kol damim shenichlesu lechaper beichal psulim. Rabbi Akiva holds it's possible. For what reason? Because Rabbi Akiva is of the opinion that dam that are brought lechaper are psulim. If they're brought beichal, are psulim. Whereas the chachamim imrim chatos bilvat. Chachamim say no, not all damim are possible if it's brought in lechaper in the wrong place, but rather only a chatos that's brought bifnim is going to passel. Rav Eliezer Aimer, Afa Asham Shenemer Kechatos Lasham. So we have 3 opinions in the end of the Mishnah. How do we deal with a case if it was first placed bifnim and then it was placed ba chutz? Says the Gemara of Nifli Nami Rav Eliezer Baha. Why doesn't Rav Eliezer also argue in this case? What do we see from the end of the Mishnah? We see from the end of the Mishnah that clearly Rav Eliezer holds that a mixture, in the previous sugya we saw that Rav Eliezer held that if you have a mixture of dam, then what do? He was the opinion of Ryan. Rav Eliezer was the opinion of Ryan, and that we view it as if the excess dam is mayim, and therefore, said Rav Eliezer, you could even place it after it got mixed up. So, frak the Gemara, that same shita should argue in our Mishnah. That Rav Eliezer should come along, and he should hold in our Mishnah. It shouldn't be Yishavchu L'Ama, but rather, it should be brought. Says the Gemara, how maybe theoretically, but Hechli Yavin, what should he do? If you're going to tell me put it outside and place it inside, but then we have a problem. Just like we have a mitzvah, the dam that goes l'mayla comes before the dam that goes l'mata, so too the mitzvah that's inside one has to go before the outside ones. And therefore, there's no way to do the outside and then the inside. Again, ba'ifin lechatchila. So we turn over to Beis and Aleph, says, okay, says Gemara, okay, I hear that, so let's do it the other way. V'nesiv lifnim, so first place it inside, v'hadr nesiv achutz, and then place it outside. Explains the Gemara, kivadika chatos v'asham, but there is a case of chatos and asham d'chinichnas the daman psulim, that once the dam goes in, because these are karbanos again that are coming lechaper, coming for atonement, and therefore once those dams are brought bifnim, it would be possible. Loib Sikalei, Rav Eliezer did not talk about this case. So it's coming out that be'etzem it's true. And be'etzem there are cases that Rav Eliezer would disagree in our Mishnah. The reason he didn't say it, because it's not an absolute din. He can't argue in all cases, so he's not going to argue in any of the cases. Says the Gemara, let's dive into Shitas Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva Eimer v'chulu. Says Rabbi Akiva that the dam becomes possible and it's brought bifnim. The Chachamim say no, only a chatas. Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel, 4 lines in the dam. Mashal l'ma'adavar daimeh. What is this comparable to? L'talmid shemazag l'rabbi bechamim. We have a talmid who's mazag. Mazag is a form of what they would do with wine. They would blend literally, but mazag, they would dilute the wine by putting in a little bit of water. So he's mazag l'rabbi bechamim. He did it with hot water. V'amar lai. And the teacher, the Rebbe, said, mazag li, please pour me another cup. Amar lai b'ma. Amar lai bechamim anu asukin achshav. Am I not right now having with chamin? So what are you asking me? I want what you did the first time, which would clearly indicate he wants bechamim. Excuse me. Amar bechamim anu asukin. Achshav bein bechamin bein b'tzainim. So now it could be either one. Hachanami here also. So again, what's the mashal one more time? If the Rebbe had said to do what? If he would have said just mazagli, what is he l'chayra applying? That which I have right now, which is hot water. But if he said explicitly with hot water, then he said must mean it means dafka hot water. By thereby saying pariv, it could refer to either one. Also what are we dealing with in the Mishnah? We're dealing with a chatas. V'asi chatas because Rachman Alamali. So why did the Torah, if we're talking about chatas, why did the Torah have to say chatas? I love chatas kamin Allah. Must mean elalav chatas kamin Allah. It doesn't mean only a chatas. Elakol kachim. So it comes out ironically. If you're dealing with a particular item and you hone in on that item, that's a way to be expansive. Let's explain. If I say pariv, if I say just give me an item, then we assume you have right now. But if you spell out you want that item, you l'chayra are coming to pique my interest. You l'chayra are coming to add something on, and therefore it would be bein b'chamin bein mitzayin. In the case of chatas, it would be called karbanis. So masla Ravuna Breder of Yeshua Mechli is arbu called kachim legabe mizbeach lini mariko shtifa. Says the Gemara, 1 second. Let's try to understand this. All karbanos were included in marika and shtifa, which is cleaning and rinsing. So right, which is the psukim right before this. Chatas the chazar Rachman Allah Mali. What a Torah say chatas. Ramina chatas in midachrin aloi. Frank the Gemara 1 minute. Aloi dami ala talmid. So if that is the case, it's a totally different mashal. What's the mashal? Tam shamazli the rabbi mechamei mitzaynim. Because we're talking about everything. Al tip zigli elochamim. That's the case that we are referring to over here. Elatayim de Rav Akiva. So says Gemara, this can't be the reason for Rav Akiva. So we have to have a new makar. Says the Gemara, Ela time de Rav Akiva mechatos v'chol chatos. The Torah says it 2 times. Titanya chatos inli ela chatos. The Torah says chatos. I know only about a chatos. Kachem minayin. How do I know kachem? Tamaloi mar kol chatos, all chatos. Kachem kalim in alim. That's only kachem. I know kachem kalim. Tamaloi v'chol chatos. Divri Rabbi Akiva. So Rabbi Akiva from the actual v'chol chatos. That's where Rabbi Akiva is going to learn his din from. Says the Gemara, Amar Loi. Now this sheet that we're about to quote, we did not quote in our Mishnah, but this is the Brisa, which is a little bit more elaborate on top of our Mishnah. And the Brisa quotes sheets of Rabbi Yosef Glili, who argues on Rabbi Akiva. Amar Loi Rabbi Yosef Glili on the first white line. If you lat Marbek Kol Hayom Kuloi Eini Shaymei Alecha. Even if you are going to learn such a thing all day long, I'm not going to listen. I'll tell you how to read the pasuk. Chatos in li'ala chatos yachid. Chatos ibar minayin, meaning don't go to expand to mean even non-chatos karbanos, but rather it just means to go from a chatos yachid to a chatos sibur. So how do we know that? Talmud Leimer says the Gemara kol chatos ve'in li'ala chatos zachar. Chatos nekiva minayin. Talmud v'chol. No, maybe you could say mamish fakert ela hachi kamar eli ela chatas nekeva chatas zachar minayin tamlar v'chol chatas. Frakti Gemara really is the shuvas Rav Yosef Glili hai karai lachi dalsa. Is this how Rav Yosef Glili really learns up these psukim? Atani we have a brisa that says fakert. Says in the brisa Glili oimer lefisha v'sinu kol einin kulai. Einu medal barim and Israfim Mesirim and Israfim Lisraif Pesuleim Abei Abira, teaching us to burn the literally Lisraif Pesuleim, that which is Pasal Abeis Abira on that area that it is Lamoid Beloy Sasei Alachilasai Amrlai. You're right. The Torah says hein lahuvu. Rabbi Yosef Glili seemingly learns that this is how you learn the psukim. So, frak the Gemara, how are you telling me in the Brayso Rabbi Yosef Glili is arguing Rabbi Kiva? It's not how he darshes up the psukim. Says the Gemara, l'dvarav to Rabbi Kiva Kamar. You're just responding back to Shitas Rabbi Akiva. Says the Mishnah, another case, but now we're going to have Karbanis being in the wrong place. Chata shekibel dama b'shnei kaisis. Yata echamiyam nachutz hapanimi kasher. Says the Mishnah, we have a chatas that you caught its dam b'shnei kaisis in 2 cups. So now either one could be used. And what happens if one of them is brought outside? So that one has a problem, but the one that's inside, habanimi kosher. One of them was brought inside. Loya says a Mashiach ki I'd say where machshava apostles we don't make the excess like itself. Machshava apostles with him. Ein oidein so nas says a Mashiach ki nichnas. So that's the reason where basically gets the dim from. Nichnas lechaper continues the Mishnah. What happens if the dam was brought lechaper for kapara? Afal pishla kiper. Even if it didn't actually work, when it wasn't applied, you didn't do that vaida with the dam. Pasol. No. It's not pasol unless it actually was put on the mizbeach after being brought in the wrong location. Kosher. If it was a mistake, it's kosher. Finally, says the Mishnah, one last case. All dam, which is possible, is placed in mizbeach, which of course is what it's not supposed to do. Loi, hurtzu atzitz, the tzitz does not create kapara. Ella, only for alatame, dam that's tame. Shehit is meratze alatame, but ve'ina meratze ala yotze. The tzitz only works for something which was not supposed to be brought because it's tame, but not something that wasn't supposed to be brought because it had a psul yaitse, that it was brought outside of the azara. So says the Gemara, let's go into the first case. What was the first case in the Mishnah? That you catch the dam achatas b'shnei koises. Tanya, we learned in the Brayso, Rav Yosef Glili kal v'chaymer. Says Rav Yosef Glili, we said, how do we know that if one cup of dam comes inside and one cup is outside, how do we know that it doesn't passel? If in a place that machshava indeed passels, bachotz loy pasel dam shebachotz es shebifnim. Dam that was brought outside is not passel, which is inside. So makom she'ein machshava baiseles bifnim. Ein oidin is doch given a kal v'choimer. Shleif so dam shebifnim es shebachotz. And that's how we know that in this case of the chatos, the fact that one dam is brought outside will not passel the other one. So Amar Le, the Chacham respond to Rav Yossi Aglili, no. Says the Torah that it's brought, that the dam that's brought, afilu mixas tama, that should passel everything. Amar Lehem says Rav Yossi Aglili, kal v'choimer liyoytze me'ata. Says Rav Yossi Aglili, we have a kal v'choimer from Yaitzi, that which went outside. Uma b'makim she'in machshava b'yisrael's b'fnim. Paisel dam sheb'fnim sheb'achotz. Makim machshava b'yisrael's b'achotz. And then she'yivsel dam sheb'achotz sheb'fnim. So sticks Rav Yossi Aglili to his guns. That won't passel in our case. Amar lo yisei l'chamim. Arehu. Oimer. Asher yuva. Says the Torah that it's brought. Hanechlas paisel v'ena yaitze paisel. That which is brought passels, that which is brought outside does not passel. Frakti Gemara, so that's the machlaikas versus the Chacham. But now ask the Gemara 1 second. Why doing an avodah, if one has kavana to bring the dam inside, should indeed passel it up? Which that was the whole tenet of the Kal V'Chomer. That machshava to bring it in doesn't passel. But for acting Gemara, why not? Why doesn't machshava passel? How do we know this from a Kal V'Chomer? Makshal pasal dam shebachotz shebefnim. B'yen machshava b'yiseles b'achotz. Makshal pasal dam shebefnim es dam shebachotz. And then shnei machshava b'yiseles b'fnim. So says the Gemara. Harei yoimer. What are we going to do with the fact that Torah says? B'yom hashlishi, says the Torah b'yom hashlishi, which shows us that it's only going to be possible if what? Makom, as we turn over to Beis and Beis, Makom she'eh mishulash be'dam, only in a place that has 3 functions of dam, basar, and emurim. So someone doesn't have voida in the chotzer with kavana to bring it inside. That's the difference being that if there's only one voida of dam, then it'll be kosher. The only time it's going to be pasul if it's going to have all 3 issues. Frakti Gemara on the second line, Beis and Beis, but why? Let's flip it around again. Ein machshava b'yiseles b'fnim. Makshal pasal dam shebachotz and shebifnim. And additionally, pasal machshava b'chotz. So tamalei marnacham ol b'shlishi. Chotz lizmanoi. Pegol is chotz lemekoymai. And those are going to be the only case that it's going to passel. And a kal v'chomer, of course, can never be stronger than the etzam drasha from the pasuk. Says the Gemara, we're about 7 lines down. The first one on line is Pegol. We begin a bit of a new discussion. Basar hayotzei lachotz pasel. Basar that leaves is pasel. Hanichnas lifnim is kosher. Shebadin shepasel. It is a kal v'chomer that it should be possible when it goes into the Beis HaMikdash. Why? Yet, Basar HaYosei Lachotz is indeed possible. Makom shebasal dam shebefnim shebachotz. Basar HaNechnas befnim ein oidin she'i basel. Should not certainly be basel. Says the Brais Harei Omer mi dama veloy basar. Teaches us that the dam becomes basal, but not the brasar. Frakti Gemara kal v'chomer me'ata. So now that we know That's in drasha. Says the Gemara, we can make a kal v'chaymer. Ma b'makshah basal time shabavnim shabachutz. Yet basal livnim kosher. Makshah basal time shabachutz shabavnim. Basal zachutz ain't no din kosher. Says the Gemara, harehu oimer. From here we have a pasuk ubasar basada treifa lo yisoichelu. From there we darshan kimuch yatsa basar lachutz lemechitzasai nesar. It's going to be asar, and therefore, what do we see? We see that included in this Isser is eating the basar that went bachotz, kache kachim, and therefore, nachamol, the kavachimer, cannot override the etzem drasha from the pasuk. But once we got involved in all the cases, all the paislim of dam that's brought inside the Beis HaMikdash, says the Gemara, let's go back to Aleph Beis. Tanu Rabbanan. Again, we're about 20 lines down. The first one line is Nesar. Tanu Rabbanan. Penima says in the Torah it has to be inside. In Liela Penima. From here I know that when is it possible if it goes inside all the way into Kachi Kachim? Hey Chaminayin, how do we know it's also possible and it's only brought into the Eichel Damalemer Ela Kodesh Penima? Ask the Gemara, Vayomer Kodesh. Just say Kodesh. Vayomer Penima. Why do we need both extra words? Amar Rava. Bazev Elimin Alzeh. This teaches on that. Midyahavi Atoishav V'Soicher V'Sacher, which we see similarly in a concept by Toshav V'Sacher. Titanya Toishav Zekanoi Kinyin Oilam. Taisha refers to an Eved who's bought forever. One, the Eved has the ear, pierced ear, and therefore he cannot eat Shuma. Sachir is a Kani Kinin Shanim. He's only there for a requisite amount of years. And that's why he can't eat the Shuma. So what do we see? Both of these are not allowed to eat the Shuma of the Bailim. But says the Braisa, Yemer Tashav, Yemer Sachir. Why do you need a Torah to say it both times? Just say Taishav. And if even a Taishav can't eat the Truma, he's there Lailam Vayed. Certainly a Sachir. Vani Aimer, Kanikin Ailam Einachal. Kanikin Shan like Kol Shekain. So says the Braisa, Ilu Kain, if this was true, you see Aimer. Know what I would have said? Taishav said Kanikin Shanim. I would not have known what is what. Aval Kanikin Ailam Yeachal. So one is needed for the other to show us what the etzem din is, and that's why you can learn one from the other. And with this we're going to conclude. Over there, they're two different people, two different gufim. Therefore, I understand why, even though you'd have a kavacham, you need a pasuk. So once we know, so the Gemara flips it around now. Once we know it's possible when it goes even just to the leichal, why did the Torah have to then explicate even if it goes all the way to the kachim kachim? Says Abaye, it's only in the case where the blood is brought through a crooked path, meaning it didn't actually go through the Eichel. It got in through the back door. We'll call it to the Kachim Kachim. That's what extra pasuk is needed for. Amrei Rava v'hava ksivbei, says Rava, but bringing his said that it shows us that the dam comes fasal when it's brought only under the normal way. Elamar Rava kol midi dechashav alei lefnei v'lefnim v'loi mifsal. Kol midi dechashav alei lefnei v'lefnim. You know what insight teaches us? Anything that you're going to bring lefnei v'lefnim, loi mifsal behechal, won't be possible if you only brought it lehechal. It will only be brought if it goes like kachei kachim. That's what the extra pasuk is teaching us. We'll stop over here. Pick it up from Rava Shayla in the next year. B'siyata Tishmaya.